Hello friends, hope you all are well. Today we are going to start with lesson number 7, the age of the Guptas. So before to start with this chapter, just have a little look of the history before these Guptas. As we all are aware that India was divided into number of small kingdoms and the ruler of those kingdoms used to fight with each other, and then in the history of India, Mauryan dynasty appeared. So the efforts of the rulers of Mauryans like Chandragupta Maurya, Ashoka, India was united under one flag, and that dynasty was there up to 187 BC. And as the last ruler of this Mauryan dynasty, that was Brihadrat, that was killed by his own army general Pushyamitra Sangha. The year was around 187 BC. With this, Mauryan dynasty came to an end. Then afterwards, if you are talking about the time period, so near about 100 of years, till from this 187 BC till the date of 4th century AD, India was further divided into number of small kingdom. Similarly, the rulers were fighting with each other. Then the chapter changed. Now this was the time of Guptas, but we are not having much information related to the origin of a Gupta Empire. Only very little information we are having. So the rise of the Guptas to power was an event of great significance. Very important it was. Like Mauryans were there, similarly Guptas were there and having very great importance in the history of India. As once again they united India under one flag, and the Gupta Empire once more brought unity and peace over nearly the whole of northern India. It was far less extensive than the Mauryan Empire, but was more steady and more enduring. So somewhere we if we want to just compare with the Mauryan Empire, it was not as much huge as Mauryan were, but in some other parts it was extended more than the Mauryans. But comparatively, this empire, Guptan Empire, Gupta dynasty, this was more steady and more enduring, means it ruled more successfully. The origin of Guptas is shrouded in mystery. So, as I told you, so we are not aware about the history or the emergence of Gupta Empire. So, this is a kind of mystery only, that is not clear. It is covered under the pages of history only, but not clear. The founder of Gupta dynasty was Sri Gupta, and who probably was only a minor chief. So in the beginning it is supposed that the founder, that was Sri Gupta, may be minor chief only. He was followed by his son Ghatotkacha Gupta. So second ruler of that particular area will be Ghatotkacha Gupta, and he was styled Maharaja. So then he styled himself as Maharaja. It means definitely he captured more area then, but we don't know much about him. After Ghatotkacha Gupta, Chandragupta I came to the throne. So if we just want to call him as particular ruler of this Gupta dynasty, so proper ruler was Chandragupta I only, as we are talking about the first ruler. Because we don't know much about these rulers, maybe these were the minor chiefs only, or these were the rulers of small areas only. But now with the advent of Chandragupta I, this dynasty started to spread over the other area of India. Then are the sources. From here our main topic start. Sources to reconstruct the age of Guptas. Plenty of sources are there after these two. Okay, so don't be confused. From Chandragupta Maurya, Chandragupta 1, we are having the sources. So as here my tongue twist, I told Chandragupta Maurya. So because many names are similar, so don't be confused. Student used to write down Maurya, so please don't repeat like this Chandragupta Maurya. This is a Gupta dynasty. Chandra name is there and Gupta surname is there. Chandragupta means the ruler of Gupta dynasty. Name is Chandragupta I. Okay, so under the sources to reconstruct of the Guptas, two kind of sources are there: literary sources and archaeological sources. Let's start with the literary sources. So first is literary accounts of Fahin. So this is very important when we are talking about literary sources. This is the main topic that can come in your exams, that literary accounts of Fahin. Fahin visited India during the reign of Chandragupta II. Time period was 375 to 414 AD. He travelled all over India for more than 13 years. On his return to China, he wrote a book called Fo Ko Ki. So question could be there, write down the name of book written by Fahin. So that is Fo Ko Ki. Meaning of this is the travels of Fahin. And during his visit, as here it is written, he traveled over India near about for 13 years. So during that period of time, his main observations are, so only those observations he had written in that book Fo Ko Ki. So those observations are, first, the city of Patliputra had two grand monasteries. Cities are same, name of cities are same as it were there when we were talking about modern empire, because area is same, name of cities are same, only the time period is different and the rulers are different and dynasty is different. So these two great monasteries, one of the Hinayan and the other of the Mahayan, and he felt amazed to see the grandeur of Ashoka's palace, which still existed. Here Ashoka is from Mauryan Empire. So the palace of Ashoka that was in that 100 years back constructed in this particular area, he was still there, and Fahin was very impressed with the impressive quality of that palace that still survive, and very impressive that particular palace was. And the wealth and prosperity of the capital city deeply impressed him. People were very rich, city was very prosperous, and there was an excellent hospital run by the wealthy citizens of the town. So even during that time period, hospitals were there, and those hospitals were run by the rich citizens of that town only. Although the king was a devout Vaishnava, the relation between the followers of various sects, so he was the follower of Vaishnava, but the relation between other sects were very cordial. Like Buddhism was there, Jainism was there, Shaivism was there, and others were there, but their relations were very good, very peaceful. The people were honest and law abiding and free from unnecessary restrictions on their movement. So as people were honest, they were law abiding. It means they followed, means according to the writings of this Chinese traveler. They were very honest, they were avoiding the rules. That's why it was not required to put some kind of restrictions, so unnecessary restrictions on their movement in the areas was not there. They could go wherever they desired to go. It means they were free to go wherever they want. Criminal law was mild and the punishment of that remained unknown. It means death punishment was not given. Fahin's narrative helped not only to reconstruct the history of Buddhism but also to know the social, religious, and economic conditions that prevailed in the early years of the 5th century AD. Wherever he went, he found the people happy. So, from here, simply we can say that we got from the literary accounts of Fahin from his book Fokoki, we get the knowledge that under the dynasty of Guptas, people were very happy, they were prosperous, they were having all the required things, they were very law abiding people, they were very honest, nothing unnecessary type of restrictions were there, they were having the freedom to move, and criminal law was mild. It means not a kind of very harsh punishments were given, and death punishment was unknown. It means death punishment was not given to anyone. So from here we got this information. So little bit more literary works we are having. Kalidas, he was the greatest literary genius of the Gupta period. About Kalidas we will discuss in another topic also in detail. His work Abhijan Shakuntalam, popularly known as Shakuntala, is regarded as one of the best literary product of the work of the world. And the Simritis also gave a lot of information and respect of the Gupta society. Vishakha Dutt Devi Chandragupta, that is a Sanskrit drama and related to the early life of Chandragupta too. From these works, that also we can get information related to the Guptas. Now, second sources are archaeological sources. So, whenever we are talking about archaeological sources, we are talking about the buildings, we are talking about the inscriptions. So, let us start with that. Under archaeological sources, the main important one is Allahabad pillar inscriptions. So, by name it is clear, the name of place is Allahabad. Allahabad pillar inscription is in Sanskrit. So the wording is in Sanskrit language, and it was composed by the court poet Hari Sena, or sometimes question could be there, who composed the pillar inscriptions at Allahabad. So it was composed by court poet Hari Sena, and it gives a detailed account of the conquest and personality of the king Samudragupta. So second question from this topic, the inscriptions is about whom, or what kind of information we can get from these inscriptions. So we can get detailed about the conquests of Samudragupta and also about the personality of him. And the inscription shows that Samudragupta's conquest can be divided into several groups. First one is, he first defeated the rulers of Aryavarta. It means the rulers of northern India, and whose dominions were extended by the Gupta ruler. So he started to conquer the rulers of northern India, and the dominions of that were annexed by the Guptas. Second, the king then marched again. So firstly, after conquering this particular area, then the ruler marched towards the southern area. So he conquered northern part of India, then moved towards the southern rulers, then he defeated them. So here he defeated the northern Indian rulers and annexed the territories. But when he defeated the rulers of southern India, he did not annex their kingdoms. And means he didn't capture the areas of southern India. Many other forest tribes and rulers of frontier and eastern regions submitted to the emperor and agreed to pay tribute. The Gupta Empire, then up to here, when he conquered the area, defeated the rulers of southern but didn't annex their kingdoms, then other nearby tribes and other nearby rulers of that particular area whose boundaries were joined there or near to that particular area, they surrendered without any kind of warfare and they agreed to pay tributes to Gupta Empire. Here also southern ruler, when he didn't annex their area, they were agreed to pay tributes, some kind of taxes or benefits. Then from the inscriptions it would appear that Samudragupta never knew any defeat. It means he was not defeated by anyone. And after these conquests, Samudragupta performed the Ashwamedha Yajna. From here, question could be there: which yajna was performed after the conquest? So, Ashwamedha Yajna was performed by the success or conquest of Samudragupta. And on this occasion, he issued gold coins depicting the sacrificial horse. So when this yajna was performed, they used to issue gold coins, and those gold coins were depicting the picture of that sacrificial horse. So Ashwamedha Yagna, that was related to that only, when they when they leave one ashwa means horse, and it was a kind of challenge that wherever that ashwa will move, the area that will be under the control of Guptas only, and if anyone wanted to challenge that, then they can challenge Guptas for a war. Then the Allahabad pillar inscriptions call Samudragupta a great musician also, and this is also confirmed by some of the coins which show him playing the veena. It means when we are talking about Samudragupta, he was very brave. He never faced any kind of defeat. Then after the victory, he performed Ashwamedha Yagna, and with this he was also having interest in music. So he was playing a musical instrument veena, as it is depicted on gold coin that he is playing a veena. Okay, the second one is the Vishnu temple. We are again having detailed topic on this Vishnu temple on page 77. Only little bit we will do from here. So Vishnu temple and the Gupta sculptures. The Vishnu temple at Deoghar, that is near Jhansi, marked a change from the early flat roofed temples to the later style with high shikras, that is towers. So earlier in India, temples were having flat roof like our houses are there. Then they changed that flat roofs into shikras, that are towers. And the Gupta sculptures discarded foreign influence and adopted a style which was totally Indian in character. So they just give up the style or influence of foreigners. They adopt Indian style only. And the Gupta artists made beautiful statues of Buddha, Bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas means the followers of Mahatma Buddha, and Vishnu and other Brahminical gods. So all related to all these Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Vishnus and other Brahminical gods, beautiful statues were there in the Gupta temple, means Vishnu temple, and the image of a seated Buddha at Sarnath and a standing Buddha discovered at Mathura. And these are the most outstanding specimen of Gupta sculpture. So if question is there, then you will write down from here the most outstanding specimens of Gupta sculptures. So the Vishnu temple is there, and the seated Buddha and standing Buddha is there. So today we will do up to this only. Next topics we will discuss in our next video. Till the time, watch this video, go through the topics. If any confusion is there, you can message me. Thank you.